Hey everyone, Joshua Kirk here with you once again, and now it's time for episode 164 of Album of the Day. Before we get into today's review, I just want to talk to you about, this is a new shirt that I'm wearing for a Nashville producer named Dave Cobb, who was sent to me by Jason Isbell's manager, Thomas Young, who saw my review for his latest record, The Nashville Sound, and has also sent me a vinyl copy of the record as well as a few other albums from probably other artists that he's a manager for and stuff. So I just want to thank him for sending me all that stuff and, being very supportive of me and my reviews. And of course, I know I haven't done a review since, a couple of Saturdays ago, but, I was, sort of out of town, I was on vacation, this past weekend to, Cambridge and Berlin and stuff like that, so it was and it was my dad's 50th birthday weekend and stuff like that, which went pretty well and stuff like that, so that's why I haven't done a review in a while. But anyway, let's get started. So today's artist is a North Carolina-based indie rock band that's definitely been some true pioneers in indie rocks and, putting out some more kind of lo-fi kind of stuff back in the 90s and whatnot, before eventually in the early 2000s doing some more kind of, polished sort of material and then eventually gaining a cult following and becoming really well known. I'm talking about the band known as the Mountain Goths, fronted by singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Mr. John Darnielle, in which I'm here to review their most recent album, which came out on May the 19th, 2017. And the album is called Goths. And, as you can see, this is the CD version of it. Let me say, really cool album cover, by the way, which really kind of sums up the theme of this record. There's a bunch of people wearing black and stuff like that, so this is kind of an album about, goths and kind of their culture and also kind of, their personality and, their music and stuff, so this is a bit of a concept album over here. I bought this at Soundgarden in Baltimore. Great record store, by the way. Definitely go there sometime. There's the back. There's 12 songs on it, and it's over. And it's over. 55 minutes. And it's produced by a producer named Brandon Eggleston, and of course mixed by Scott Solter, who has been a veteran working with a lot of different indie artists before, like Spoon and John Vanderslice, and of course this band too, the Mountain Goths. Sorry, I dropped it. And there's some really pretty artwork on here, which, depicts every one of the songs beautifully, I think. And of course it does have all the lyrics too. I really like some of them, including, the singer trapped in a steel cage, or, the crucifix, the candle light sort of, in a cave, and there's, the liner notes and stuff. And I also do like the stuff with, the car, and, the storm drain, and, the black sunglasses, and all that stuff. So yeah, that's the packaging for Goths, the new album from the Mountain Goths. Now, Gothic culture is kind of, something that, it kind of seems like it's kind of long forgotten, because not a lot of artists have been talking about that. So I thought it was cool to see somebody, John Darnielle kind of, talk more to kind of make a whole record about this, since, since it doesn't really get the credit, since, goths don't really get the credit they necessarily deserve. And, concept albums can be kind of hit or miss. They could either be really good and really have purpose to them, and other times, it can feel just a little heavy-handed and, feel like they're just doing, being conceptual just for the sake of it, but not in the case of this new Mountain Goats record. I feel like, I'm still kind of educating myself on John Darnielle's work, because he seems like this indie rock dude with just a really cool personality, and it really shows throughout this record. And I'm a junkie for outsider records with such an intriguing narrative, pretty much. So that album is pretty much just that. The album was preceded by a couple of singles, and those two are the first two songs on the record, which are Rain in Soho and Andrew Eldritch is Moving Back to Leeds. The song Rain in Soho, really great track. Definitely a great opener for the record, because it just kind of pulls you in. It just sounds so epic and, dark and intense. It's definitely this cool kind of gothic drama to open up the record, pretty much, with the kind of dramatic piano, as well as these huge group vocals provided by the Nashville Symphony Chorus, which makes sense. The record was recorded at a studio in Nashville called Blackbird Studios. This song definitely, right away kind of shows him sort of, painting this sort of outsider figure, pretty much, for, the record. And record, as well as dropping in references to, like, D.B. Cooper's Fall and, and stuff like that. And, kind of, and sort of, and, it's definitely such a great opener for the album, and definitely one of the best singles of the year, in my opinion. And the song Andrew Eldritch is Moving Back to Leeds. Definitely a more low-key sort of track, but, definitely still very interesting in terms of, like, the lyrics. Of course, its name coming from the English frontman for the band, Manic Street Preachers, it's called, that started out as kind of a post-punk band, but then eventually transitioning into gothic music, after that, and, yeah. And, the lyrics on this song are definitely, quite interesting and stuff like that. So, and, sort of, talking about Andrew Eldritch as, like, this guy who, people don't really celebrate him as much, that much, for example, in lines like, they don't throw him a parade, he just comes in on a train, one suitcase in his hand, and an old army backpack from the Second World War from a Leipzig second-hand store. And also sort of talking about, these guys in, Motorhead jackets that, knew him, way back in the day and stuff like that are kind of like, his old friends, pretty much, and also I do really like the production on this song, the kind of atmospheric electric piano, as well as the really grand, flutes, fluttering flutes on the track, I thought were really nice too. This is actually the Mountain Goats. I heard this is their first studio album to not have guitars on it, minus bass guitar, which I think that does kind of make sense for this record, kind of, giving it a little bit of sarcasm, because it is talking about goths and stuff like that, but it does say in the liner notes, no comped vocals, no pitch correction, no guitars. I like that kind of sense of sarcasm that kind of adds to the record, you know. And don't be scared by the fact that this is a guitarless record from them. They aren't trying to, you know, sell out to mainstream radio by dropping in a bunch of synths and overproduced beats, you know. This is actually a very nuanced and diverse record, so, you know, so it's definitely a record where, you know, don't be scared by the, omitting of guitars here. And next we have the song, The Grey King and the Silver Flame Attunement, which, he sort of, talks about this guy who, like talking about, this guy that they're calling, like, the Grey King and stuff like that, and sort of painting this picture of him in this new Pontiac that he just bought, and like he's half desperate for peace with the surface dwellers, but coming to no conclusions. But also kind of, in the second verse, sort of, talking, sort of, the narrator is sort of talking about how him and a few other people are in the car with him and, scared of dying. And they're all staring at the front seat because they're assuming his form, reborn in the heat. And I love how he says in the chorus, "I'm hardcore, but I'm not that hardcore." Pretty clever right there. Clever. And this one has a bit of a jazzy kind of lounge feel to it with the drums that are like played with brushes and stuff. And as well as, the kind of eerie saxophones at the end I thought were really beautiful. A good bass line on the track that does add a nice bit of a unique groove to the song as well. The song We Do It Different on the West Coast is definitely, I love some of the song titles. Like, that song title is definitely one that, right off the bat, you're in for one really interesting track. Which lyrically it does sort of talk about how, you kind of hear some bad reports of some places from people you don't really trust. But the people you do trust kind of say good things about these places, like talking about hearing bad reports about Long Island, and he doesn't trust what they say. And, he heard some good things from his friends about Chicago. And John Darnielle is accompanied by some group vocals, sort of bringing in other people to sort of, tell everyone that, that they all do it different in the West Coast. And I also do like how he says, "Dave went to New York, I don't care. You can't shut people up once they get back from their Christmas out there." Very true, John Darnielle. The song is a little more bare bones instrumentally, but, it does sound really nice, like kind of loose floating chords of the electric piano, the bass, and the drums definitely do sound really nice, and they definitely do have some nice chemistry together, all playing a small but very important role to the song, in my opinion. One of my favorite tracks on the record is the song Unicorn Tolerance, which, is kind of like this kind of upbeat, sunny, power pop sort of ballad, pretty much. Definitely one of the more upbeat tracks, which is refreshing considering the more darker and more kind of, intimate cuts here on the record. It's a nice little bit of a, breath of fresh air there. Which the song sort of talks about how, he's, drawn to the, how he's like, drawn to the dark and, all this, stuff that's such a big part of, that's such a big part of, like, the Gothic culture and, sure, and stuff like that. And he says stuff like at the end, for example, sort of talking about how, it gets real nice around the graveyard once you've acquired the taste, and saying like, long life to the spiders, safe travels to the crow, love to the ghost who taught me everything I know, but also revealing that he has high unicorn tolerance. It's sort of talking about how he used to be really obsessed with all these cartoons and, all this kind of soft stuff, but then eventually, sort of deciding to put that all aside, because he thought it would make him look cool. And sort of talking about kind of his, regret of that. And, talking about how he really wants to show off more of himself and, self, which, is kind of a thing that we all kind of go through pretty much. And also, this song has, some of the best production on the record. I love the kind of upbeat, sunny vibe of it, to, the bass line and the keys, and also the peppy woodwinds are definitely very nice, as well as kind of that husky bass clarinet just takes the song to the next level, in my opinion. And the next song, Stench of the Unburied, is one that sort of sees John Darnielle making some reflections of, kind of his adolescent years and his love for all these different goth bands that have been kind of forgotten since then. He, especially in that lyric and the hook of, outside it's 92 degrees, and KROQ is playing Susie and the Banshees, making a reference to the Susie and the Banshees song, 92 degrees, and 2 degrees. And also, and also, bringing up some kind of, poetic curveballs of, an ice chest full of Corona and Pineapple Crush. It'll take 20 years for the toxins to flush, and when the sirens wail, I know we're going to jail. Definitely an interesting track, lyrically for sure, and, does have some interesting elements, including that kind of, chopped up piano at the end of the song. The song Wear Black is sort of a song that sort of, glorifies sort of, Goth's tradition of, a Goth's, sort of tradition of, wearing black no matter where you are. It's kind of a song, about how, when you're a goth and you don't wear black, you don't really seem to kind of blend into that kind of society. So he's sort of talking about how he seems like he's vanishing in, this kind of, society pretty much, which is definitely very smart. And I also do really like, the song is probably the most Beatlesy on the entire record with, the doo-wop harmony vocals, which are definitely, kind of, huge and, and very kind of grand, which I like. And also the piano, it definitely sounds like something that, I could hear maybe on something like, Sgt. Pepper or Abbey Road, whatever. Abbey Road. And, I like how he says, see me, Lord of the Thomas Guide and stuff like that. The song Paid in Cocaine is, kind of a song that sees kind of goth musicians sort of, sort of coming into the play here. Telling this story of this show that they played back in '85 and finding the master tape from that, and the money that they've made out of their performance kind of, gets paid kind of gets, paid and on drugs and including cocaine and stuff like that. So, it's not really as, blunt as maybe the title sounds, which I do think is, really nice. And I do like how he says in the chorus, Long Beach, Can You Hear Me? And, I do like the vocal harmonies on the song. Even though it may be my least favorite track on the record, because I found maybe the jazzy instrumental to be kind of a little goofy in my opinion. The song Rage of Travers is definitely a very unique track on the record. Musically, I mean, this song has kind of that kind of laid back, sort of slow paced, kind of reggae inspired groove to it. Love the bass line on this track. And, the saxophones do sound really nice on there. Really interesting drum groove, pretty much. It's sort of given a twist on kind of that, it's sort of a twist on kind of that reggae sound that we kind of know and love, pretty much. But musically, I like how it's told from the point of view of this once huge goth rock star who used to fill up arenas of thousands, then eventually, people started ignoring him because they were finding out his secrets to the point where he wasn't all that popular anymore. And, the balcony was getting closed and, sort of talking about how he's just feeling very sentimental, even though they broke the news to him so gentle, which, that's not, typically, we don't typically hear rock stars sort of, talking about just sort of the sentiment that they have, pretty much, about, playing in these really tacky now having to play in these really tacky clubs to, just a few people, pretty much. And talk, so, while the first verse talks about, sort of, kind of, him losing his popularity, pretty much, the second verse sort of talks about him just wanting to have a good time and, dress up like corpses with everyone and stuff. Because he just doesn't belong in that society anymore. I'm gonna have to say probably my favorite track on the record would have to be the song Shelved, which is the very next song on the record. I do like, kind of, the kind of, anxious bass and keyboards on the song. It's definitely, definitely a sense of dreary darkness to it that I definitely do really like. That really works in the context of, this is again, we hear yet again another goth rock musician who is sort of talking about how he just wants to do his own thing and, and stuff like that, and he wants to wallow in the spoils for the crowd, and he's gonna refuse, and he wants to refuse to do all these things that, the record label or his fans are telling him to do, sitting on a soundstage tethered to a crucifix, hence the really pretty artwork of the crucifix on there. And also, he's not gonna write some songs with this clown that they set me up with in a Los Angeles, just rehearsal studio, and also making references to, refusing to tour with, Trent Reznor, pretty much, which, this is one of the only times I've ever heard Trent Reznor referenced in someone else's song other than his own, pretty much. Oh, and, he knows that the ride's over, but he's not ready to go. But I do like, kind of that end section that, has this really cool 80s inspired kind of arena rock sort of vibe to it, but, definitely sounds really nice. The huge synthesizers and, that psychedelic bass line, and Peter Hughes coming in with the lead vocal and lyrics that just kind of takes the song to the next level, pretty much. It's a nice little kind of relief from, the kind of darkness of the earlier parts of the song, pretty much. The song, and of course, it wouldn't be a goth album without a song dedicated to goth metal bands. So here we have a song called For the Portuguese Goth Metal Bands, which has kind of this eerie, almost kind of underground cave-ish kind of vibe to it. It's got kind of, the kind of these kind of tribal patterns played on the drums and stuff like that. Some heavy bass drum work going on here, as well as, there's this kind of, echoey sort of, creepy piano hanging in the background as well. So, like, what I like about this album is how incredibly diverse the set of songs are musically, as well as how intriguing and relatable they are lyrically. And the song does make references to, a bunch of, different things, like, that one Celtic Frost record that almost everyone hates. Pretty much, and some some really haunting lyrics on the song, including like "Find the octave in the shadow and stay there," and "Bleeding bile all night," into an SM58, and stuff like that, and also like telling them find what's keep what's precious, drop what's not, and also like headline really big festivals every other summer in Brazil. And, you do get some really nice saxophones that, definitely seem to feel strangely right at home on there and stuff. And I love the artwork of, the candlelight playing its tricks on the walls of the cave, as mentioned in the lyrics with the line, hauling these songs to the light from the mouth of the grave. The song and the album closes out with the song Abandoned Flesh, which definitely is the perfect closer for the record. Sort of, going back and sort of mentioning all the different themes kind of, mentioned on the record of like, Susie has enough hits to keep the bills paid. Every child knows how to do the spider web dance, probably making a reference to unicorn tolerance, probably. But sort of mentioning how, mainly talking about Gene Loves Jezebel. Gene Loves Jezebel, which is this goth band that pretty much everyone has forgotten about, pretty much. And, sort of talking about how, when the singer went solo, he left money at the table, and how the two main guys were at war with each other, and they are related. And, while Billy Corgan did bring him on stage, which brought him a little more exposure, however big that chorus bass may throb, Peter Hughes demonstrating that nicely with the bound on the bass. Bass, you and me and all of us are going to have to find a job, because the world will never know or understand the suffocated splendor of the once and future goth band. And I do like kind of, the jazzy saxophones and, on the track and, stuff like that. And it's definitely really nice sort of ending sort of descent to this journey of, goths and their some pretty much really intriguing personality as presented here on this record. So yeah, definitely a great record. I highly recommend you check it out. It's definitely one of the best indie albums of the year. It's definitely got some of the best narrative that I've heard in an indie album this year. So yeah, I'm definitely going to give this an 8 out of 10. And I will check out some of their other stuff pretty soon, because how much I really like this record and stuff like that. Anyway, that's my review of Goths, the new record by the Mountain Goats. I'll see you for episode 165.